Hey guys, what's going on? Jeb here, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a little bit of technical analysis, and we're also going to be talking about some very interesting news, because if you guys have been following the channel, or you've been following cryptocurrency news in general over the last week and a half or so, you'll probably remember that on January 23rd, the VanEck Solidx Bitcoin ETF, the Bitcoin ETF that I've been talking about personally for over 6 months, and that the rest of the cryptocurrency space has been excited about for about the same amount of time, was actually pulled. Now, that Bitcoin ETF was going to have to be approved by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, and unfortunately, because the U.S. government was shut down, the VanEck and Solidx decided that instead of allowing that Bitcoin ETF to kind of just slip through the cracks, they would pull it, and now, lo and behold, we have some good news. They have gone ahead and refiled that Bitcoin ETF. Guys, I've talked about in literally over a dozen videos on this channel about how important this Bitcoin ETF is, and this is amazing news because it means that there is definitely a chance that this is actually going to be accepted sometime in the future. And also, VanEck and Solidx have gone through and revised this proposal, adding about 40 pages of content to make it more likely to be accepted. Guys, this is some really big news. We have a lot to talk about in today's video, and that's not even to mention the technical analysis I want to do on Bitcoin here. So we have a lot to cover. If you guys enjoyed the video, definitely consider dropping a like and hitting that subscribe button. You guys know the drill. Without much further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Bitcoin is currently trading around $3,438 on the Coinbase exchange. Of course, it's trading a little bit higher on Bitfinex and some other exchanges. As we can see here, Bitcoin has actually been moving to the upside over the last 6 hours or so at the time of recording this video. Yesterday we were recording this video and Bitcoin had actually started dropping, and I was talking about in that video about how it may be possible that Bitcoin's about to go on a rally. And in today's video, I was going to talk about the bearish scenario for Bitcoin, but because we've had this news and because we have seen this development, I'm going to put that off to tomorrow or maybe indefinitely, depending on what happens in the next 24 hours. Anyway, we have seen a little bit of bullish price action come out of Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and go on over to CoinMarketCap and do a little bit of the crypto market recap so that we can get caught up and then jump back on into the TA and into the news. Bitcoin across all exchanges is currently trading just a little under $3,500, and if we sort by change over the last 24 hours, we see Hollow is in the double-digit green, and the majority of the cryptocurrency market is following it also in the green. We have no double-digit losers. The top 10 are very, very green. XRP's down 0.1%, nothing really to write home about here. Daily volume on Bitcoin hovering around $5.5 billion. Anyway, you guys have told me in the past that you don't really care all that much about the CoinMarketCap update, so what we've been doing lately is I've been trying to kind of rush through that, give you guys the information you want, and let's get back on into the chart. So the first thing that I want to talk about here is actually the not the news. I want to actually talk about the technical analysis, and then we're going to jump back on into the news, then we're going to jump back on into some longer-term technical analysis in relation to said news. But the first thing I want to talk about, and the first thing that we are going to talk about, is the descending and the falling wedge pattern that we talked about in yesterday's video. As you can see, if we draw a downtrend right here, connecting several of these points at the top here, several of those peaks, and we draw a downtrend of support right there, connecting several of these bottoms, we can see that Bitcoin is pretty close to the end of a falling wedge pattern, as we talked about in yesterday's video, and as we're going to talk about in this video. And what we've seen over the last couple of hours, like I showed you earlier, is that Bitcoin has actually been moving to the upside. Now, if you remember from the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy, from your own research, and from yesterday's video, whichever one of those three or all three that you've done, falling wedges tend to break bullish. Wedges tend to be reversal patterns. So if the wedge is pointed downwards, typically it's going to break bullish. If the wedge is pointed upwards and we have a wedge like that, typically the market's going to break bearish. And in this case, Bitcoin is pointing to the downside. We've just had some very positive news. We see the Bitcoin shorts and longs going up, causing more volatility, more volume, more retail investor interest coming into the space. And in my opinion, based on the feeling of the market, and this isn't really so much technical, this is kind of instinctual after you've been working in a market so long, it seems to me that the bulls are a little bit stronger than they were, and the bears are losing some of their steam. I've discussed why I believe that in a couple of other videos, but for now, we're going to go with that. And it seems to me that the bulls are a little bit stronger. It seems that the bears are a little bit weaker. And it also seems to me that we're probably going to break bullish out of this downtrend of resistance. Like I said in yesterday's video, there's a good bearish case here. I'm not giving this like a 70 or 80% bullish case scenario. It'd probably be about 55 to 65% bullish that we break bullish and get above this downtrend of resistance. If you guys would like to see what that scenario looks like with Bitcoin breaking bullish and starting to move to the upside, breaking that downtrend of resistance, I do highly recommend the video that we uploaded yesterday. I talk about in that video about what a breakout on Bitcoin would look like. I talk about levels of resistance. I talk about the convergence of resistance. I talk about price targets and all of that. So go check out that video if you'd like to see that scenario. I'll link that in the top right in the card as well. Anyway, with that out of the way, I did want to give you guys a little bit of an update and what I think on this now that we've had another 24 hours of price action. Let's go ahead and get on to what you guys have been waiting for and what I'm sure we have all been very excited to hear. and that is that the CBOE has refiled the Bitcoin ETF proposal, and the last deadline is in early October of 2019. We'll get to that in a second, but I do want to go ahead and start reading through this article. As you can see, it's a rather short article, so I'm going to read it verbatim and comment on it on the way through. Just a few days after its withdrawal, CBOE has resubmitted the VanEck Solidx Bitcoin ETF proposal for approval by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. The latest possible deadline for approval is now likely sometime in early October. Now, there's a lot of things we have to pick apart there. The first thing is, why was it resubmitted? Well, if you guys didn't catch up with the news, you guys didn't see this, on January 23rd, VanEck, Solidx, CBOE, they all pulled the Bitcoin ETF that was more than likely going to be approved if there wasn't a government shutdown. In my opinion, anyway, it looked like a very good, I very much liked the proposal. The SEC seemed to, a lot of the concerns that the SEC had about cryptocurrency markets were alleviated and addressed in that proposal. And they've been addressed even better in the new proposal, but it seemed like that Bitcoin ETF had a pretty good chance anyway of being accepted. The reason it was pulled is because the government was shut down, the United States government was shut down, the federal government was shut down, and what they didn't want to happen was for the Bitcoin ETF to kind of just slide through and get approved because the Securities and Exchange Commission wasn't working, because of course when the government shut down, only necessary personnel are working, and the personnel that would be in charge of approving or disapproving a Bitcoin ETF were not working. Of course, because the government was shut down. So they went ahead and pulled it, but they've gone ahead and resubmitted it. Now, the annoying thing about this is because the thing about proposals of Bitcoin ETFs, or not just Bitcoin ETFs, ETFs in general, is that the SEC has up to 240 days to go ahead and either accept or decline the approval of what's called the rule change. In this case, the rule change is the Bitcoin ETF. And the reason for that is because the SEC has a certain amount of time that it has to make the decision, and then it can postpone that decision 3 times. And that adds up to somewhere around 240 days. And since we've been, as we can see, the SEC can take up to 240 days to make up its mind on the matter, which means that the SEC very well may not end up approving or disapproving, giving us an idea of what's going to happen here, this Bitcoin ETF until October of 2019. Now, that's a little annoying, but I'm going to talk about in the technicals and the fundamentals later on in the video as to why that might actually be a good thing and why that actually might be the best case scenario. It might be better that this Bitcoin ETF be accepted then rather than now, so stay tuned for that. Let's go ahead and keep walking through here. Gaber Gerbax, I know how to pronounce that, it was just kind of a mouthful, Director of Digital Asset Strategy at VanEck, revealed that the CBOE has resubmitted the VanEck Solidx Bitcoin ETF proposal for approval by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. If approved, the proposed rule change would allow the CBOE BZX exchange to list Solidx Bitcoin shares issued by the VanEck Solidx Bitcoin Trust. CBOE withdrew its application on January 22nd. I had that date wrong. My apologies. It was reported on January 23rd, but it was withdrawn on January 22nd. At the time, VanEck associates Jan VanEck explained that discussions with the SEC about Bitcoin-related issues had to stop because of the government shutdown. He explained, instead of just trying to slip through, as I talked about a second ago, we had the application pulled and we will refile and re-engage the discussion when the SEC gets going again. And honestly, this may seem like annoying. This may seem annoying that this was pulled and is being resubmitted literally a week later. But honestly, in my humble opinion anyway, I think it's the best thing that they did for this, because there was a good chance, in my opinion, that this was going to get approved, and the approval process when the SEC is shut down is an absolute clown fiesta, so I'm not even going to go there right now. But if somehow this Bitcoin ETF had gone into effect when the government was shut down and the SEC was like, no, actually, that's approved now, that's happening now, but we don't want that. We don't want that drama in the cryptocurrency space, guys. We don't want the SEC to have a problem with the cryptocurrency space. So I'm very happy that they pulled the Bitcoin ETF, actually, just to avoid any kind of mess, and also for reasons I'll be talking about later, like I mentioned a second ago. Anyway, prior to that, the application was supposed to receive a final ruling on February 27th. Get ready to wait again. This is what I was talking about a second ago. Legal expert and popular Bitcoin commentator Jake Chernovisky explained that the new timeline for the decision of the commission won't be set until the proposal is officially published in the Federal Registrar, because it's based on when it's published in the Federal Registrar, not when it's actually public. He estimates that the final timeline will be sometime in October 2019, and he's absolutely right, because even though we have, or not we, but the CBOE has gone ahead and refiled this Bitcoin ETF rather quickly, that does reset the time that the SEC has to make that decision. And because they've done that, it may take a long time to do so, because the SEC... The SEC is a government institution, guys. Government institutions tend to drag their heels, and they tend to take all the time that they can before the rest of the government comes in and tells them to stop taking all the time that they can. You guys know how the government works. Since we're in cryptocurrency, I mean, you understand what's going on here. Anyway, the point of the matter is, the Bitcoin ETF has been resubmitted, and one thing that this article doesn't talk about is that this new Bitcoin ETF proposal is actually a little bit different. About 40 pages of new content have been added to the proposal to alleviate many of the concerns that the SEC perhaps may have or does have with the Bitcoin market, the cryptocurrency market, and the way that the market is structured. The SEC was having a lot of worries about market manipulation based on a lot of manipulation on some of these exchanges. Many of the exchanges in cryptocurrency are not anywhere near as regulated as, for example, stock exchanges in the United States. So there was a lot of concern about that, and this Bitcoin ETF proposal has tried to address some of those concerns. I do highly recommend you go and read the entire proposal so that you know what those are. I'm not going to get into it in today's video because it is a lot. Anyway, now to wrap the video up, let's go ahead and talk about some longer-term technical analysis, and let's go ahead and talk about why this might actually be a good thing for Bitcoin. Of course, it's a good thing for the short term. Today, it's a good thing, and yesterday when this news story actually broke, it's a good thing that the Bitcoin ETF has been resubmitted. It very well may have something to do with this little bit of green we've seen, but in the long-term perspective, why might this be a good thing? Why might it be a good thing that this Bitcoin ETF was actually delayed 240 plus 10 days or so in potentially? Why is that a good thing? Well, I'll give you my opinion on it. And that is, since the initial deadline was for around the end of February for 2019 for this Bitcoin ETF to be accepted or declined, approved or disapproved, that would not have been a good thing. It would have been very bad, in my opinion, actually, if that Bitcoin ETF had been approved right then. And why is that? Well, that's because the Bitcoin bear market isn't all the way through yet. Now, you guys know that, in my opinion anyway, the Bitcoin bear market is in the process currently of transitioning into a Bitcoin accumulation phase. We've lost a lot of valuation, and we've lost a lot of our downwards momentum with it. And Bitcoin is mostly trading sideways now above $3,000 or so. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we're most certainly not in a bull market yet, and we are most certainly not in a state where we're going to be able to make the most out of bullish news. As I've talked about many times, and this doesn't just relate to markets, this relates to the discussion of optimism and pessimism also. I was talking about that with a friend of mine yesterday. A lot of times what you'll see is that bullish news is really bullish in a bull market, and bearish news, it's not that bad. Bearish news in a bear market is really bearish, and bullish news, it's not that big a deal. And that's what I'm worried about happening, is that one of the biggest news stories possible, something so important as a Bitcoin ETF being accepted, happening at a time like this where Bitcoin is neutral, if not slightly bearish, that news story would be wasted, guys. And you guys also know, if you've been watching the channel, that I expect this accumulation phase to last for the majority of 2019, and we're going to start moving up sometimes in late 2019, perhaps early 2020. Now, what does that mean? Well, if Bitcoin is starting to move to the upside in October, November, December, quarter 4 of 2019, and we have a Bitcoin ETF get accepted at the beginning of a bull market that was probably going to come anyway, think about that for a second. How amazing would it be if Bitcoin has finally exhausted the bears, if Bitcoin has managed to hold $3,000 for all of 2019 and is starting to move to the upside, as all of my technical analysis is saying that it most likely will, and right around that time, a Bitcoin ETF is accepted. Guys, that would be huge. It would be so much bigger than a Bitcoin ETF being accepted back over here in the downtrend of the bear market, because if it was accepted back here, that news story would have been wasted, because like I said, bullish news isn't that big a deal in a bear market because it's a bear market. But if we're already moving to the upside and we get that confirmation of bullishness from the fundamentals and from traditional finance markets, from the U.S. government, that would be huge. So tell me in the comment section down below what you think of that analysis. Do you agree that it might actually end up being the best thing for Bitcoin in the long term, if not for the short term, but definitely in the long term, that this Bitcoin ETF was actually pulled and has now been resubmitted and will likely not be accepted for another 6, 7, 8 months? You know, I always try to look at the bright side of things, but even if I weren't a raging optimist internally, I think I would still have this opinion. So tell me in the comment section down below what you think of that. Also tell me which direction you think Bitcoin's going to break out of this falling wedge pattern. I think it's most likely going to break bullish, but there is definitely a good case for the bears. If there's nothing interesting to talk about in the news tomorrow, and we haven't broken out yet, I will go ahead and talk about the bearish scenario, but let the record be known that I do think it's a little bit more bullish for Bitcoin right now. Like I said earlier, probably about a 55 to 65% chance that we break bullish, about a 35% chance that we break bearish. Anyway, guys, like I said, I do hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to learn how to do Bitcoin and cryptocurrency technical analysis, I do highly recommend checking out the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy, linked in the description. I'm going to be adding 5 new videos to that over the next couple of days, so if you're in CT2A or you're thinking about getting in CT2A, or you're not in CT2A but you want to weigh in anyway, feel free to tell me what kind of videos you'd like to see in the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy. If you think there's something missing and you're waiting to jump in the course but you want a certain video, I am going to be uploading 5 new videos to the course, and I'm going to be making those over the next week and a half or so. So tell me what you think about that. I already know which ones I'm going to do, but I'm more than happy to switch them out if some of you guys very much want a particular video in the course. Anyway, guys, like I've said, probably 3-4 times. You can go back and check. That's going to do it for today's video. I do want to thank each and every single one of you for watching as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.